June 15, 1961, 8:04 a.m., East Harlem. 16-year-old Ruthie Johnson was walking home from her summer job at the library. She had her arms full of books. She was humming a Motown song. She was thinking about what she'd eat for breakfast. She had no idea that in the next 30 seconds, her life would change forever, and her father, Bumpy Johnson, would turn New York City into a hunting ground. A black Cadillac pulled up beside her. The door opened. 3 men stepped out. One of them smiled at her. "Ruthie Johnson?" he asked. She stopped walking. Something felt wrong. "Who's asking?" "Your father sent us to pick you up. There's been an emergency." Ruthie's heart dropped. "What kind of emergency? Is he okay?" "He's fine, but he needs to see you. Right now." Ruthie hesitated. Her father had always told her, never get in a car with strangers. Never trust anyone who says there's an emergency without proof. Never let your guard down. But these men knew her name. They knew her father, and they sounded urgent. She took one step toward the car. That's when she saw it. The gun tucked into the waistband of the second man's pants, and she knew. She tried to run, but it was too late. A hand clamped over her mouth, an arm wrapped around her waist. She felt herself being lifted off the ground, carried toward the open car door. She tried to scream, she tried to fight, but they were too strong. The door slammed shut, the car sped away, and Ruthie Johnson disappeared. At exactly 8:04 a.m., Bumpy Johnson's worst nightmare became real. But the kidnappers made one fatal mistake. They gave Bumpy Johnson for hours to think, for hours to hunt, for hours to become the most dangerous man in New York. What happened next wasn't just a rescue, it was a masterclass in power. A father's love turned into an unstoppable force, and the birth of a legend that Harlem still talks about today. This is that story. 8:47 a.m. Bumpy Johnson's apartment, 139th Street. Bumpy was drinking coffee, reading the newspaper. It was a quiet Thursday morning, the kind of morning that made him think, maybe, just maybe, he could have a normal life. Then the phone rang. He picked it up without thinking. "Hello." Silence. "Hello," he repeated. Then a voice, cold, mechanical. "Bumpy Johnson, listen carefully. We have your daughter." The world stopped. Bumpy's hand gripped the phone so hard his knuckles turned white. His coffee cup fell to the floor and shattered. But he didn't move. He didn't breathe. "Say that again," he whispered. "We have Ruthie, 16 years old, red dress, library books in her hands. We picked her up on 116th Street 43 minutes ago." Bumpy's vision went red. His entire body was shaking, but his voice stayed calm, dangerously calm. "If you hurt her, shut up and listen." The voice interrupted. "You're going to do exactly what we say, or you're going to get your daughter back in pieces. What do you want?" $500,000, cash, and you're going to walk away from Harlem, forever. Sign over your territory, your businesses, your protection rackets, everything you have until midnight tonight. "Midnight," Bumpy repeated slowly. "That's 15 hours. That's right. Plenty of time, unless you want to test us, because every hour you waste, we hurt her a little more." Bumpy closed his eyes. He forced himself to breathe, to think, to stay in control. "How do I know she's alive?" There was a pause, then rustling, then a sound that made Bumpy's heart stop. "Daddy." It was Ruthie. Her voice was shaking, scared, but alive. "Ruthie baby, are you okay? Did they hurt you?" "I'm okay. The phone was ripped away. The cold voice came back. "She's alive. For now. You have until midnight. We'll call with instructions. And Bumpy, if you go to the cops, she dies. If you tell anyone about this call, she dies. If you try to find us, she dies." "Understood, understood," Bumpy said. The line went dead. For 10 seconds, Bumpy Johnson stood perfectly still, the phone still pressed against his ear, his mind racing through 1,000 thoughts at once. Then he hung up, walked to his bedroom, opened his closet, and pulled out a black leather bag that he hadn't touched in 3 years. Inside the bag was everything he needed: his razor, his gun, his brass knuckles, and a notebook filled with names, addresses, and phone numbers of every criminal, cop, informant, and power player in New York City. Bumpy Johnson was going hunting, and God help anyone who got in his way. 9:15 a.m. Red's Pool Hall, 145th Street. Bumpy walked into the pool hall like a storm. Every head turned, every conversation stopped. Eddie, Marcus, Charlie, backroom now. The three men dropped their pool cues and followed him without question. They'd worked for Bumpy for years. They knew that tone. Something was very, very wrong. Bumpy closed the door behind them, locked it, then turned to face them. Someone kidnapped Ruthie. The room went silent. They want 500,000 in my territory. Bumpy continued. Deadline is midnight. I have 15 hours to find her, get her back, and make sure the people who did this never do it again. Eddie stepped forward. Boss, what do you need? I need information. Fast. Someone in this city knows where she is. Someone saw something. Someone heard something, and I am going to find them. Marcus pulled out a notepad. Where do we start? We start with the voice, Bumpy said. The man who called me wasn't from Harlem. He had an accent. Italian, maybe Sicilian, which means this wasn't some street crew trying to get lucky. This was organized, professional. Charlie's eyes widened. You think it's the mob? I don't think. I know. This has the Genovese family written all over it. They've been trying to push me out of Harlem for years. Now they're using my daughter as leverage. So what's the plan? Eddie asked. Bumpy pulled out his notebook, flipped through pages, stopped on a name, Anthony Big Tony Romano. He's a capo in the Genovese family. Mid-level guy, not powerful enough to order a kidnapping, but connected enough to know about it. We find him. We make him talk. And if he doesn't talk? Marcus asked. Bumpy looked up. His eyes were cold, empty. The eyes of a man who had nothing left to lose. Then we make him scream until he does. 9:52 a.m. Big Tony's Social Club, Little Italy. Big Tony Romano was eating breakfast. Eggs, sausage, espresso. The morning newspaper spread out in front of him. He had no idea that Bumpy Johnson was about to walk through his door. The front door didn't open. It exploded. Crash. The hinges ripped off. The door slammed onto the floor. And standing in the doorway was Bumpy Johnson, flanked by Eddie and Marcus. Big Tony dropped his fork. What the Bumpy crossed the room in 4 strides, grabbed Tony by the collar, lifted him out of his chair and slammed him against the wall. Where's my daughter? I don't know what your crack. Bumpy's fist connected with Tony's jaw. Blood sprayed across the wall. Wrong answer. Where is my daughter? I swear, Bumpy, I don't know. I don't know anything about. Bumpy pulled out his razor, opened it slowly. The blade caught the morning sunlight. You have 5 seconds to tell me the truth, or I'm going to start cutting pieces off of you, and I'm going to keep cutting until you talk, or until there's nothing left to cut. 5. Bumpy, please. 4. I'm telling you the truth. 3. Tony's eyes were wild with panic. Okay, I heard something. Just a rumor. 2. There's a warehouse. On the docks. Pier 47. That's where they take people when they want to keep them hidden. Bumpy stopped counting. Who owns the warehouse? Carmine DeLucci. He's a soldier. Works for Vito Genovese directly. Is that where they're keeping her? I don't know. I swear. That's all I heard. Bumpy studied his face. Tony was terrified, shaking, but he was telling the truth. Bumpy let go. Tony collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. If you're lying, Bumpy said quietly, I'll come back, and next time, I won't ask questions. Then he turned and walked out. As they got back in the car, Eddie asked, You think he's telling the truth? Doesn't matter, Bumpy said. It's the only lead we have, and we're running out of time. 10:38 a.m., Pier 47, Brooklyn Docks. The warehouse was huge, old, abandoned, the kind of place where people disappeared and were never found. Bumpy, Eddie, and Marcus parked 2 blocks away. They approached on foot, quietly, carefully. Eddie pointed. 2 guards, front entrance. Bumpy nodded. We go in quiet. No guns, unless we have to. I don't want Ruthie caught in crossfire. They circled around to the back, found a rusted side door. Marcus picked the lock in 15 seconds. Inside, the warehouse was dark, empty, except for voices coming from the far corner. Bumpy motioned for Eddie and Marcus to spread out. He moved forward alone, staying in the shadows. 3 men were sitting around a table, playing cards, laughing, drinking. But no Ruthie. Bumpy's heart sank. Wrong location, a trap. Then he heard it. A sound from above. The second floor, a muffled cry. His daughter. Bumpy's entire body tensed. He looked up. There was a metal staircase leading to a closed door on the second level. He had to get up there, but the 3 men were in the way. Eddie appeared beside him. "Boss," he whispered, "there's a back staircase. I can get up there. You create a distraction." Bumpy nodded. He stood up, stepped into the light. "Gentlemen," he said loudly. The 3 men spun around, their cards scattered across the table. Their hands went to their guns. "Bumpy Johnson," one of them said slowly, "you're not supposed to be here." "Funny, I was about to say the same thing about my daughter." The man smiled. "She's fine, for now, but if you don't leave right now, she won't be." "Here's what's going to happen," Bumpy said calmly. "You're going to tell me where she is. You're going to open that door upstairs, and you're going to let her walk out of here, or what?" The man interrupted. "You'll kill us. There are 3 of us, and 1 of you." Bumpy smiled. It was a cold smile, a dangerous smile. "I've faced worse odds." The man raised his gun. "Last chance. Bumpy, walk away, or crack." Eddie dropped from the second floor railing, landing behind the 3 men. His bat connected with the first man's skull before anyone could react. The second man spun around. Marcus came through the side door and tackled him to the ground. The third man aimed his gun at Bumpy, but Bumpy was faster. He lunged forward, grabbed the man's wrist, twisted it until he heard bones crack. The gun clattered to the floor. "Where is she?" Bumpy growled. The man was screaming in pain. "Upstairs. Second door. The key is in my pocket." Bumpy shoved him to the ground, grabbed the key, ran up the stairs. He reached the door. His hands were shaking. He put the key in the lock, turned it, pushed the door open, and there she was, Ruthie, tied to a chair, tape over her mouth, her eyes red from crying, but alive. "Ruthie," Bumpy breathed. He rushed to her side, pulled the tape off her mouth, started untying the ropes. "Daddy," she sobbed, "I was so scared." "I know, baby, I know, but you're safe now. I've got you." The ropes came off. Ruthie collapsed into his arms. Bumpy held her tight, tighter than he'd ever held anything in his life. "Did they hurt you?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, they kept me here. They said they were going to kill you." "Nobody's killing anybody," Bumpy said. "Not today." He picked her up, carried her down the stairs. Eddie and Marcus had tied up the 3 men. "What do you want to do with them, boss?" Eddie asked. Bumpy looked at the 3 kidnappers. They were bleeding, broken, terrified. "Leave them," he said, "but take their wallets. I want to know who they are, who they work for, and who ordered this." Marcus searched their pockets, pulled out 3 all Genovese soldiers. Marcus confirmed. Bumpy nodded. Could become about to have a conversation with Vito Genovese himself. 1:15 p.m. Genovese family headquarters, Manhattan. Vito Genovese was one of the most powerful men in New York. He controlled gambling, drugs, unions, and politicians. He had judges in his pocket and cops on his payroll. But today, he was about to learn that power has limits. Bumpy Johnson walked into Genovese's office without knocking, without permission, without fear. Vito looked up from his desk. His eyes narrowed. "Bumpy, you have a lot of nerve walking in here. And you have a lot of nerve kidnapping my daughter." Vito's expression didn't change. "I don't know what you're talking about. 3 of your soldiers, warehouse on Pier 47. They had my 16-year-old daughter tied to a chair." Vito leaned back in his chair. "Even if that were true, what makes you think I had anything to do with it? Because they wanted 500,000 in my territory. That's not a random kidnapping. That's a power play. And only you have the authority to order something like that." Vito was silent for a long moment. Then he smiled. "You're right. I did order it." Bumpy's jaw clenched. "Why?" "Because you've been a problem for too long. Bumpy, you control Harlem. You won't pay tribute to my family. You operate like you're untouchable. So I decided to remind you that nobody is untouchable. Not even you. You used my daughter." "I used leverage," Vito corrected. "It's just business." "Business," Bumpy repeated slowly. "That's right. And here's how this business is going to end. You're going to walk away from Harlem. You're going to sign over your operations to my family. And in exchange, I'll let you and your daughter live. That's a generous offer. Bumpy, I suggest you take it." Bumpy stood perfectly still, his eyes locked on Vito's. "No," he said quietly. Vito's smile faded. "Excuse me," I said. "No, I'm not walking away. I'm not signing anything over, and if you ever come near my family again, I will burn your entire empire to the ground." Vito laughed. "You and what army?" "I don't need an army," Bumpy said. "I have something better. I have information." He pulled out a folder from his jacket, dropped it on Vito's desk. "What's this?" Vito asked. "That's a list of every dirty cop you have on payroll, every judge you've bribed, every politician you own, every crime you've committed in the last 5 years. Names, dates, locations, evidence." Vito's face went pale. "If anything happens to me or my family," Bumpy continued, "that folder gets delivered to the FBI, the newspapers, the district attorney, everyone, and your empire collapses overnight." "You're bluffing," Vito said, but his voice was shaking. "Am I?" Bumpy leaned forward. "You tried to use my daughter as leverage. Now I'm using your entire organization as mine. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave me alone. You're going to leave Harlem alone. And you're going to tell every family in New York that Bumpy Johnson is off limits forever." Vito stared at him. "And if I refuse, then I mail that folder tomorrow morning, and you spend the rest of your life in prison or on the run. Your choice." For a long moment, neither man moved. Then Vito nodded slowly. "You win, Bumpy. This time." "No," Bumpy said. "I win every time, because I don't play games with people's families. You do, and that makes you weak." He turned and walked toward the door, stopped, looked back. "One more thing, Vito. The 3 men who kidnapped my daughter. I want their names, all of them, and I want them out of New York by tomorrow, or I'm coming for them myself." "Done," Vito said quietly. Bumpy nodded. Then he walked out. June 16th, 1961, 7 o'clock a.m. Bumpy Johnson's apartment. Ruthie was sitting at the kitchen table, eating pancakes. Bumpy was watching her from the doorway. She looked up. "Dad, are you okay?" Bumpy smiled. "Yeah, baby, I'm okay. Are you?" She nodded. "I was so scared, but I knew you'd come for me. Always," Bumpy said. "No matter what, no matter where, I'll always come for you." Ruthie stood up, walked over to him, hugged him tight. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, baby." That morning, word spread through Harlem, through Little Italy, through every corner of New York's underworld. Bumpy Johnson had rescued his daughter in less than 4 hours. He'd stormed a warehouse, fought off kidnappers, walked into a mob boss's office, and threatened him to his face, and won. The story became legend. People said Bumpy Johnson was untouchable, that he had eyes everywhere, that he could find anyone, anywhere, anytime. They said he loved his daughter more than power, more than money, more than his own life, and they said that if you ever crossed Bumpy Johnson's family, you wouldn't live long enough to regret it. All of it was true. Epilogue. The legacy. Ruthie Johnson grew up to become a teacher. She taught history in Harlem for 37 years. She never forgot what her father did for her that day, and she spent her life teaching young people about courage, loyalty, and love. Vito Genovese died in prison in 1969. He was convicted on drug charges, but many believe it was because someone leaked information to the FBI. Nobody ever proved it, but everyone suspected it was Bumpy Johnson who kept his promise. Bumpy Johnson died on July 7, 1968. He was 62 years old. Over 5,000 people, came to his funeral. Criminals, cops, teachers, neighbors, people from every walk of life. Because Bumpy Johnson wasn't just a gangster. He was a father, a husband, a protector, a man who believed that family came first, always. And on June 15, 1961, when his daughter was kidnapped, he proved it. In 4 hours, he turned New York City upside down. He risked everything. He faced down the most powerful crime family in America. And he won. Not because he was the strongest, not because he was the richest, not because he was the most ruthless, but because he was a father. And nothing in this world is more dangerous than a father fighting for his child. That's the legend of Bumpy Johnson. That's the story Harlem still tells. And that's why, more than 60 years later, people still say his name with respect. Because Bumpy Johnson didn't just rule Harlem, he protected it, he loved it, and he would die for it. And on that day in June 1961, he proved it. This is the untold story of Bumpy Johnson. Subscribe for more legends, more history, more truth. Because the real Bumpy Johnson was so much more than Hollywood ever showed you, and his legacy lives on.